Hello, this is Cruel Games, and today I'm going to be doing a little different. I'm going to be making a Stellaris review, not a review, a game guide of basic concepts, advanced concepts, and just some tips that I've kind of picked up while I've played it. So yeah, we'll cover several things in this game, such as, not this game, god, this video, such as Fallen Empires, endgame crises, tips, sector management, resource management, specialization of planets, and a few other things. So stay tuned for that. Alright, so I've loaded a save here, and it's a smaller save, and so basically I'm going to go over some of the basic tips of the game. For example, there's some basic concepts like your naval capacity, which is the amount of ships that you can have in your military fleets, which is right here. There's your core systems. We'll get into that a little later. Basically, that's the amount of systems currently under your control. There's your research, your physics, your society, and your engineering research. There is your three kinds of currency, which is influence, which is used for more political kind of purchases, such as supporting leaders if you are a democratically ruled nation, and edicts and whatnot. There's the minerals, which are used towards building buildings and ships, and small upkeep towards ships that already exist. Then there's energy credits, which are really big in the upkeep of buildings and ships. And then there is this More tab, which is planet and sectors, where you can look at your planets and their governors and their population, comprised of what species and how many of what species. Your leaders, which is the tab where you can view your different leaders, such as governors, scientists, admirals, and generals. Factions, which I don't have any, but if there's unsatisfied factions, a faction is someone who's kind of like rebelling against you. Strategic resources, which is an early game, so I don't have any, but you can view like Betharian metal, like any strategic resources I can use for special buildings. There's species here, which is a list of all the species that you have encountered in the game. So here are so far all the species that I've encountered in my early gameplay. Okay. There's policies and edicts, which is your policies here. You can customize these, like first contact protocol, leadership, what kind of species can vote, what kind of species can lead, resettlement, migration, which you can change that up. All of these things: purge, slavery, war philosophy, and you can make these edicts, which can grant certain boosts and debuffs to your empire at the cost of influence per turn, of course. Then there's your research tab, which, as you can see, I will currently lack a scientist right here, which I believe I will hire one. This guy will be good for engineering, so we will put her there. So as you can see, we have the engineering, which is more like maybe armor systems, some weapons that aren't energy based, and upgraded spaceports and whatnot. You have your society, which is more like your ability to colonize new worlds, government, research, like more biology and society kind of things. Then you have your physics, which is where you can get new kinds of warp drives or hyperdrives or wormhole drives. There's you can get energy, shields and whatnot in this tab. So that's basically the basics, and then on here you have your outliner, which will tell you your planets, their names, and what systems. Your military fleets, which I currently have one at the moment. All your fleets that you are managing will be listed here. Your civilian ships, which will up here, like your construction ships, your science ships. Rally points, which is kind of a newer thing where you can set rally points at spaceports to have constructed ships go there. Observation, which is observation posts, which you can build around primitive civilizations planets, which will grant society research. So that's the basics, information and whatnot, and basically that is what covers, like, the basics of the game. So we're gonna go into some tips that I can give for making more money and whatnot in this game, more minerals and energy and stuff. So yeah, we'll get into that. So here we are, and we're gonna talk about gaining more resources and minerals in Stellaris. So basically, usually what I do is you have your world, you have your tiles here, and then you can construct buildings on the tiles, which are worked by a population, which give you a mineral outcome, or an energy outcome, or research. Planets, they can produce a lot more than space stations. And usually, what I want to do is it's actually good to specialize your planets. I usually don't specialize with my homeworld, but colonies I specialize. And what I mean by that is, like, specialize one planet to be a energy powerhouse, or specialize another one to be like a mineral mining haven. Like that, it's pretty useful. So, like, for example, when I want to go to a new planet, I would look at the planet summary, and usually your homeworld's pretty balanced, so that's why I don't really specialize my homeworld. But for example, if I go to this planet right here, I can see that there is more energy on this planet than any other resource. As you can see, 7 energy, 4 minerals. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm specializing in power plants. Power plant, power plant, power plant, which gives me a resource output of 9. If we go to this planet, as we can see, this is a mineral producing world. So I've recently been humiliated by a fallen empire. We're going to get into fallen empires later in this video, so I'm producing less minerals here. But I am constructing minerals and mines here. Here, you can see that this is a small world, but it's mostly energy. So I'm trying to specialize towards energy on this planet. So what I would do is, like, you look at what it mostly produces or mostly has, and you build mostly that accordingly. And that can lead to, bigger boosts. And another useful thing is for, like, energy, for example, you can get these percentage increase buildings, like the power hub for energy, which not only harvests the energy on this tile, but it will also give you a percent boost. As you can see, energy credits plus 10%. And what that will do is, like, as you can see here, I am producing 21.8 power from the power plants, and then the power hub plus 6.8, and then I'm consuming some of that. So it's really useful. That's why I say specialize, because if you have a planet that's covered in energy or minerals, and you build one of those buildings, like the power hub for energy, and, like, I have a planet just covered in energy buildings, right? Like this planet, eventually when I clear some of these tiles, it'll be covered in power plants. I build a power hub. That will be really useful for significantly increasing the output of the energy credits. So it's really good to specialize planets. It can lead to huge resource boosts. And don't forget, clearly I'm making the mistake with this planet right here, to make sure you get governors. Usually you want to get the governors on to, so see, for this planet, since I'm going to have a lot of clearing to do, I would get a governor who's good at clearing, and that can also increase your happiness and whatnot. So yeah, that's basically tips for specializing your planets to do more minerals and energy. Make sure you also build plenty of stations around these, because that'll be pretty useful. Next, I'm going to get into sector management. Alright, so we're going to talk about managing sectors. And if you don't know what a sector is, basically, as I said, we were going to get into this later. If you look right here, you can see the directly controlled colonized systems. And usually for most empires, depending on your government type, it starts at 5. And what that means is, as you can see, I have 4 planets for this early game. And these 4 planets I am under direct control of. Once you hit this limit, so let's say I colonize one more planet, right? Once I hit my limit of directly controlled planets, I have to start sectoring out planets. And that's actually how you sector out planets can really make or break a game. It can. And what I usually tend to do is, a lot of people fall into the trap of sectoring out the small worlds that are kind of useless. That way they don't lose resources. But that's actually not really a good idea. So usually what I want to do is, when I'm trying to sector out pieces of my empire to sectors, and what a sector is it's an AI controlled part of your empire where you'll assign a governor, and there'll be an AI that kind of governs it and, you know, keeps it running smoothly. But the reason I say put your very developed worlds into sectors is because the AI for the sectors isn't really good. They're only really good for upgrading buildings. They don't know how to build and plan, and it's not a great AI. So I usually put my more developed worlds, like if this had energy all over it, like if this was a colony, this would be a good planet to put into a sector, because this is well developed. All the AI has to do is keep it. And as you can see, I don't have any sectors currently because I don't need sectors. But when you do sector out planets, you usually want to give the sectors the really powerhousey worlds that you've fully developed and that you've done a good job with, and that way you can work on building up the smaller and more insignificant worlds in your population. And usually what people will make the mistake of doing is, like, say I declare war on these people and I conquer all of their planets, right? Don't sector them out. Sector out your more developed worlds and work on developing and making the people on these worlds happy. It's really useful, and you need to be able to sector out worlds correctly. And the also being is, if you sector out your more developed planets, you can take as much resources from the sectors you'll be allowed to, because the AI won't really need them towards development. So you can set it all the way to 75%, so you can take 75% of the sector's product from it. You just need to give it your worlds that you've developed. I usually keep my capital world under my control, but the rest, if these were all developed properly, then I would give those 2 sectors. And then I would take the small worlds and I would slowly develop them, then sector them off if I need to. So yeah, that's how you manage your sectors. Like I said, you usually want to give away your more developed worlds. That way the AI can work with the powerhouses that you have already developed, and that way you can work on developing your smaller worlds. And yeah, it's pretty good. So next we're going to get into some more advanced concepts, like fallen empires, for example, because they are actually very important. Okay, so as of the new update, fallen empires are actually a very big part of the game. They used to be kind of just insignificant and sat there and didn't do very much, but they've actually become a lot more significant as of the don't remember exactly what it's called, but the 1.3 update. So for example, I have this fallen empire, which unfortunately for me is near me. So now you may look at this world, right? It's a 100% Gaia world, Gaia, or however you pronounce that. It's a very lush world. It was a huge world. But the thing is this fallen empire right here, okay? The fallen empires have different, how may I put this, personalities. These guys are holy guardians, okay? Now, Holy Guardians, there's several different kinds. We'll start with Holy Guardians. Holy Guardians set holy sites. They protect worlds that they believe are holy. For example, this world, okay? This world is a holy world. Look how amazing this world is. Perfect for colonization. But I can't have it. It's a holy world. If you settle on these holy sites, you'll incur the wrath of this guy. And that is how I ended up going to war and getting humiliated, because fallen empires are huge, not huge I wouldn't say, but they're very advanced empires with huge fleets. They start off like this. They don't expand, they don't really colonize, they kind of just sit in one place, but they enforce their will onto other empires, which is why I ended up getting this world taken from me relatively quickly, because I'm a weak empire, and they targeted me. They said, you can't have that world. I kind of just said F you, because I'd had an experience where I basically, every time I told an empire, didn't, like, basically told them no, they didn't do anything, but this time they did something. War, 230k power fleets, destruction, and I basically just said, fine, take the world away from me. There's a few other there's a few other types of fallen empires that you can come across. These are the Holy Guardians. They protect the holy worlds. There's enigmatic observers, which they are extremely xenophilic. They love aliens. Their philosophy is to protect life. So any empire that enacts atrocities on their population, for example, enslavement or purging, the I'm so bad at words. The enigmatic observers, they will be pissed off at you and basically tell you don't enslave / purge people, and if you do, we'll kill your face. That's what the you know what, fuck it. The xenophile race will do. That's what the enigmatic observers, that's what their specialty is. Okay. There's the Keepers of Knowledge. Basically, what they do is they don't let you research dangerous technology. And what I mean by that is, it's an engineering research. If you research sentient AI, which is a dangerous technology and can lead to the development of sentient robots, they hate that shit. They basically say, don't do this, you can't do this. If you start to build synthetics, which are third-tier buildable populations, which have sentience, which can lead to one of the galactic crises, which I'll get into later, they basically tell you, dismantle all of your AIs, don't have any more robots, and if you don't do this, we'll hate you and fight you. That's what they do. And they also forbid other dangerous techs like the jump drive, which leads to the faster appearance of another galactic crisis called the extra-dimensional invaders. So yeah, that's what the Keepers of Knowledge do. Then there's the militant isolationists. They are basically, they kind of just keep to themselves. The only rule that they have, which isn't as big a problem as the rest, is basically don't get near their borders. So if this guy was a militant isolationist and I put a colony here, that would piss him off. He'd be like, okay, you're close to my borders, remove this colony or we'll take it from you. We'll not take it, but we'll make you leave, basically. We'll shoot you until you leave. So yeah. Basically, your best bet is just don't piss them off, do what they want, and until you think you're strong enough to fight them, trust me, don't be fooled by their small size. See, I'm a new empire, look at this. And they are almost as small as, I'm almost as big as them in terms of size and, planets and systems owned. But don't be fooled by that, because their fleets are massive. But there are some advantages to fallen empires, and that is, they can't construct new ships. Okay, so if you go to war with one and you have a fleet capable of taking out some of their ships, they can't build ships. So if you want to play a war of attrition against these guys, you can eventually whittle them down to nothing, because they can't build new ships. That's the main advantage when warring one of these monsters. But there's a catch to that. Eventually, later in the game, okay, these guys can turn into what is called an awakened empire. That's when things get scary, and there's a few things that can trigger awakened empires. There's a few things. You can powerful regular empires. So when empires such as mine or this guy next to me, normal empires begin to get fleets that are large, such as 20k, 30k, 40k, once they get larger fleets like that, fleets that can actually rival what these guys have, they become an awakened empire. And what an awakened empire is a fallen empire who colonizes, builds new ships, and tries to enforce what they want on other races to a much larger extreme. So each personality has their own sort of awakened empire they can become. So the enigmatic observers, the ones that love aliens, they become benevolent interventionists, and basically their objective is to enforce a galactic-wide peace treaty that keeps every single race in this game from going to war. They can do everything, but they can't purge, war, or any of that. They can't enslave. They have to just basically exist. And every one of these kinds of awakened empires will keep a kind of vassal, I guess you could call it, who is responsible for certain things and has a certain name and has to do certain things for the fallen empire. So if you wish to not incur the wrath of an awakened empire, so they don't basically destroy you, can submit as a subject to them and do what they will. So the enigmatic, I can't say that, observers who love aliens, they take signatories who can't wage war or enact atrocities, which would be purging or enslaving. The Holy Guardians, the ones I told you about that protect the Holy Worlds, they become doctrinal enforcers, which try to convert the galaxy to their ethics and their spiritualist ways. They like to keep tributaries, who are responsible for enforcing the ethics and government of the fallen empire onto other empires. So basically to assist the doctrinal enforcers in their endeavors. There's the watchful regulators, which stem from the keepers of knowledge. And what the watchful regulators do is they limit the tech of all empires. So if they get their way, they make it so no empire can research any dangerous technology. They keep satellites as subjects who pay part of their research, and they have to ban the construction of AI. So yeah, they keep you from building like jump drives and sentient AIs, and they make it so you can't build any robots. There's the gnostic reclaimers, which come from the militant isolationists. Their main objective is conquering the galaxy. They'll build ships after ship after ship, and they'll expand until they've conquered it. But there's a way to, not be conquered, and that is to become a thrall, which is their form of a subject, who have to pay tribute to them in form of energy credits and minerals, I believe. They cannot colonize planets, so if you're a thrall, you are no longer allowed to colonize. But thralls can fight amongst each other. So if this was an awakened gnostic reclaimer, and I become a thrall of it, and then he becomes a thrall to it, me and him can fight each other, and I can conquer his worlds. Okay, I can make this become part of me. But what I can't do is construct a colony ship and take this world. That's not allowed, but conquering worlds is allowed amongst thralls. So like I went into earlier, you can awaken an empire by becoming powerful enough to almost kind of rival their fleet power that can awaken an empire. It halves the time for awakening. Oh, and this is a big one. This takes it down to 1/10 of the time to awaken a fallen empire. If I get a huge fleet, right, and I am basically able to conquer stuff from this empire, if I go to war with him and I seed a planet from this fallen empire, the amount of time it takes for an empire to awaken is cut down to 1/10 of what it originally was. So basically, conquering other fallen empires can lead to a very fast awakening of another fallen empire. It's kind of ridiculous. Uh, only one empire can awaken this way though. So if there's powerful empires and there's conquered fallen empires, only one of the fallen empires can awaken from these triggers. Though there's another trigger that can happen that can cause the second fallen empire or just awaken the first one. And that is a galactic crisis, which we'll be getting into soon. A galactic crisis, basically what that does is, So a galactic crisis can awaken a fallen empire. So, for example, the extra-dimensional invaders come, this empire is like, oh shit, I have to protect the galaxy. So they start building ships and they start, constructing stuff like that. And they start conquering and they go toe-to-toe against the extra-dimensional invaders. That's how that happens. Okay. So that is basically how fallen empires work. They turn into awakened empires and they can enforce their will onto other empires. If you want to avoid war with them, a good way to do that is make sure you just don't do the things they don't want you to do. That's the best way. Or if you really are insistent on taking this planet that you just think you deserve, then what you want to do is make sure you don't have a fleet this small. You want to have better fleets than this. Make sure you have at least 10k and have allies, because these guys may look small, but they are a lot more menacing than the eye lets on. I'm telling you, they are a force to be reckoned with. Okay. So next we will go into the different crises you can come across in this game, their mechanics, what they do, things like that. Okay, so now it's time to go into some of the endgame crises. Currently, there is 3 of them. There is the extra-dimensional invaders, the Praetorian Scourge, and the AI rebellion. So we're going to the extra-dimensional invaders first. So what the extra-dimensional invaders do is usually it's triggered by, you'll know they're coming when you see a galactic power surge. A notice will pop up on the screen and say galactic power surge. That's how you know they're coming. And it'll tell you kind of like where the point of origin is. After an amount of time, a portal will open. What's like in a random system. Any of these hundreds of systems you see, a portal can open there. Okay, so let's say a portal opens right there. And then they'll start spawning fleets that are large, like almost fleets probably as or if not larger than the fleets constructed by fallen empires. They'll be huge, they'll do tons of damage, they'll be powerful. Okay, and they'll slowly spread out, they'll build military stations, which expand their borders. And what they do to get rid of empires is, when let's say one of their fleets comes into the system, gets rid of all defenses, and all that's left is Earth. Your ground armies, they don't matter in that scenario. Their fleets go above Earth, and they instantly purge all pops from it, okay? And then they'll build military stations inside of your world. They build military stations in every single star that they come across. That is how they work. Usually the tactic for them, play defensive for a little while, because let me tell you, when it comes to the crises, the AI empires are very useless. Let me tell you, they're very useless. Like this empire right here, useless. The only time you'll see them fighting a galactic crisis is when the galactic crisis is in their borders. They're bad. Usually you'll find that either an awakened empire or the good player are the only people trying to fight galactic crises. So the extra-dimensional invaders, they're dangerous. Make sure you kind of just build up your defenses. Keep your fleets on the borders near where they're approaching from. If they're across the galaxy from you, so I'm here and they're way over here, they're not in immediate danger, but I suggest you prepare for them because they're eventually going to become an issue for you. Usually crises begin to slow once they get bigger, so once it gets to about this size of this portion of the galaxy, it'll start to very slowly expand because they'll be fighting on so many fronts. So that's the extra dimensional invaders. Now, the AI rebellion. This one's it's a very much slower growing crisis. It grows a lot slower than the other ones, and what happens is if a empire such as me develops sentient. There's 3 stages of robots. There's the robots, there's the droids, and then there's the synths. And the synths are sentient. They have happiness measurements. They can be triggered by happiness, enslaved and dismantled. That is how this AI rebellion starts, is from synths. Because if you treat the synths terribly, you enslave them, you dismantle them, you allow those policies to be in effect at all, that can start the AI rebellion. That can lead to it. If any empire does that, okay, not just you, but any empire does that, then that can lead to an AI rebellion. It's not as scary to begin with, but it's pretty scary if you have robots in your empire. If you have droids or synths, I don't think robots you have to worry about, but droids or synths can be converted to an AI rebellion robot, and anytime a pop of droids or synths gets converted, it'll spawn 2 rebellious robot armies on your planet, which will attempt to take it. And it's very dangerous. It's a slow growing one, but it can cause a lot of damage if not quickly gotten rid of. Then there is the Praetorian Scourge, which I personally would say is probably the most destructive on a galactic scale. Let me tell you, they're destructive. They remove a lot of life from the galaxy. So basically, you'll know they're coming. You'll get a warning that'll say subspace echoes, and they'll say that there's an entry point. And the Praetorian Scourge only spawns on the edges of the galaxy. Okay, so any part of the galaxy touching deep space, that's where you'll find that they spawn. That's where you'll find them. And they're dangerous because they're similar to the extra-dimensional invaders in the sense that they'll build military stations and they'll invade you and destroy your fleets and everything. But here's the kicker. Where the extra-dimensional invaders will get fleets above your systems and consume all of your population, but leave the planet intact. The Praetorian Scourge is extremely dangerous because not only will they go after planets which contain an empire, but they'll go after any planet with life on it. And they, instead of instantly taking it, they'll invade it with an army, which usually their armies are overwhelming anyway, so your best bet is just to use fleets to keep them out of your stars. Their fleets are also, by the way, as powerful as the extra-dimensional invaders are. So they'll invade. Those land armies, if they get rid of your ground forces, they occupy it like you would in a war to another empire. If they get an infestor pod over to your world, that's where it ends, because once an infestor pod, it's like their version of a colony ship. No matter what your world was, so for example, Earth being the continental world, no matter what your world was, it'll become an infested world. And that's how you know you've lost that world permanently, because an infested world will not only be able, it'll spawn more infection pods and more invasion armies, but it'll stay there. And the only way to get rid of it is to get a fleet above the infested world and bomb it. It'll have an integrity meter here once it goes down to 0. Now here's the thing, you'd think that when you're done bombing the planet, you would get it back, it would be all well and good. No, okay? When they infest a world and you get rid of the infestation, whatever your world was, like Earth, the lush continental world that it is, will become a barren world, such as the moon. Barren world. So, it's bad. So, this continental planet with all of the life-containing abilities it has, one infestor pod, and it is now a barren world once you get it back. It destroys planets and makes them inhabitable. That's why I said it was the most destructive on a galactic scale. You want to avoid letting these guys get into your systems. They are dangerous. You should be heavily defensive. Now, because of their destructiveness, there had to be something to balance it out. Later in the game, usually I try to play it defensive and try to build my fleets to get ready up until this happens. When the Praetorian Scourge is invading, another faction will spawn. This faction is called the Sentinels, and they'll contact you, and they'll maybe even give you ships to assist you and whatnot. And the Sentinels are the only AI besides an Awakened Empire, if the Awakened Empire so chooses to awaken during this crisis. Sentinels are the only thing that'll actually fight back against the Scourge. They'll invade Scourge worlds, bombard them, slowly try to get rid of them. Sentinels could lose. Multiple Sentinel factions can spawn as well, I believe. So they'll continue to attack the Scourge. The Scourge could beat them. They can beat the Scourge, but they'll probably most likely need your help. Usually when the Sentinels appear, that's when I send my ships out to help them, if I have a power level high enough to, be of significance to the cause. So that's mostly what you need to know about, the endgame crises. They're extremely dangerous. You're going to want to play it defensive for a little while until you think you have the power to be able to invade them. I usually wait till they're more spread out, because they're larger and a lot harder to get rid of in terms of time. But the only, for the extra-dimensional invaders, I think they only spawn new fleets when you begin attacking their portal. And another important detail I actually missed about the extra-dimensional invaders is there'll be 3 factions of them eventually. So if one faction spawns and you allow them to continue to stay, a second faction will spawn to challenge that first faction, which they will invade normal empires. They will invade the other extra-dimensional. A third one will spawn, and it'll be a 3-way extra-dimensional invasion. They'll fight each other, or they'll fight you. It's a disaster. So, like I said, these are very dangerous. You want to play it defensive until you think you have the power to go out and attempt to get rid of said galactic crisis. It's scary. You need to be prepared for these things. So yeah, that is what the endgame crises do. That's kind of a guide for Stellaris. That's, advanced guide, the basics, some tips that I have discovered through my playthrough, such as the sector management and the specialization of worlds and whatnot. It's pretty useful. I believe that I covered a lot in this video. I haven't covered the DLCs, because in the DLC there's stuff like the War in Heaven and the Leviathans and whatnot. Those are something else. I only will cover the DLCs separately, because not everyone has DLCs. This is just for vanilla. These are just for updates that everyone has if you own the game. So if you enjoyed the guide, if you found it helpful, please don't be afraid to travel to my YouTube channel, Cribble Games. Maybe you can drop a like on this video. You can even subscribe. Maybe I'll do more guides like this in the future. I do other videos like playing with my friends and whatnot. So thank you for watching my guide, and don't forget to subscribe if you liked.